These terrifying monsters are the true enemies of humanity who swoop down to devour civilizations and leave nothing but piles of ashes behind, while the helpless people below watch their entire world burn. To fight these beasts, you basically have to choose a side. In this world, there are only two paths you can take if you want to survive and protect what matters. First, you have the mages. These guys are the ones who can perform actual miracles using nothing but supernatural magic circles and pure brain power to blast enemies away. The massive dragon ignores every spell thrown its way as it descends toward the terrified mages, who quickly realize their magic is completely useless against its scales. The beast lets out a deafening roar as magic spells clink harmlessly off its body like tiny toys, just before a mysterious figure suddenly drops onto the battlefield. Just when things look totally hopeless, something moves through the air like a literal bullet. Someone is finally stepping up to the plate to save the day. One brave soldier refuses to back down, while desperately swinging a sword that barely makes a single scratch on the creature's thick hide. One of the regular soldiers is gritting his teeth, feeling the pressure of the battle. He knows he is totally outclassed by this monster. The dragon prepares to fire off another blast of flame. It looks like it is game over for everyone on the ground below. A massive explosion rocks the area as the dragon's power erupts. People are just paralyzed with fear, realizing how powerless they really are in the face of such raw destruction. Suddenly, a blur of motion cuts through the chaos. A lone warrior descends from above, looking like an absolute boss amidst the flames and falling debris. Our boy Oscar moves with insane speed, closing the gap in the blink of an eye. He lunges at the dragon with a strike so powerful it puts every mage there to shame. The dragon lets out a final roar of shock. It never expected a mere human to be this dangerous or to move this fast. Oscar raises his blade to deliver a final strike that marks the end of the dragon's long reign of terror over the land. With a single clean strike, the monster is sliced in half. Oscar lands perfectly, his cape fluttering as the threat is finally eliminated once and for all. The surviving mages and soldiers are just standing there with their jaws on the floor. They cannot believe what they just witnessed. If you master the path of the sword, you become a legend. You become what people call a sword saint, a pinnacle of human strength and skill. Oscar is the legendary sword saint who stands as the pinnacle of human strength after surviving countless battles against the terrifying dragon kin. He eventually travels to a remote frontier town where everyone is hyped to see him. They never expected a big shot like him to visit such a backwater place. Oscar listens to the crowd, but his mind wanders back to a time before he became the world's most famous protector. He walks past the crowd, his presence alone commanding respect. Even the locals can tell this guy is on a completely different level than them. He notices a father and daughter crying nearby, probably overwhelmed by the recent attack. Oscar just keeps walking, carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Suddenly, he stops when he hears someone shout about something being pretty. His attention is immediately grabbed by a small spark of light in the distance. A local man is showing off a tiny bit of magic to a little girl. It is just a simple trick, but Oscar is staring at it like it is the most amazing thing ever. The legendary warrior finds himself completely mesmerized by a simple spark of magic that he could never hope to perform himself despite his great power. Oscar thinks about how he became someone everyone looks up to. But honestly, he admits to himself that he still has this deep longing for magic that he felt back when he was a kid. He heads out to the mountains to train, swinging a wooden sword with terrifying intensity. Every strike he makes is so powerful it literally changes the landscape around him. The daily training of the Sword Saint is so intense that he has literally carved a massive crater into the solid mountain earth through sheer repetition. The girl asks if the Meister trains here every single morning. She is holding a scroll and looking completely overwhelmed by the sight of the crater. Oscar is just finishing his routine, his feet planted firmly in the dust he created. The amount of effort he puts in is actually insane. The guy explains that Oscar basically sank the ground through sheer repetition. The girl is just in disbelief, realizing the guy is basically a force of nature in human form. The young girl trembles as she experiences the overwhelming pressure radiating from the man who conquered the world's strongest monsters. The guy points out that she has something important for him. She looks down at the scroll, her hands shaking slightly from nerves. She finally works up the courage and yells out for the Meister. Oscar stops his training and looks over his shoulder at the new arrival. She runs down into the crater he made, waving the document in the air. She is desperate to get his attention and deliver the message. Oscar takes the message and scans the words with a cold indifference that leaves the messenger girl feeling extremely anxious and confused. He just crumbles the paper up with a faint smile. Whatever achievement or reward was on that paper, he clearly does not care about it at all. The girl is confused by his reaction. She probably thought he would be excited about whatever was in that message from the capital. She tells him he could have a high-ranking position in the capital with his achievements. Oscar just says he is done with all that petty political drama and faction fighting. The girl smiles with deep admiration, while assuming the master is just a humble man who values his training over fame or fortune in the capital. Oscar reflects on the heavy burden of the choice he made a long time ago while struggling with his hidden regrets. He admits that he does not even love the sword that much. He only chose this path because his father, who was a sword guide, told him he had to do it. He gives a bitter smile, while admitting he only became the world's strongest swordsman out of a pure sense of duty. The girl argues that he clearly had a natural talent for the sword, regardless of what his father forced him to do. She begins to feel her own inner turmoil as she thinks about the secret dreams she has been hiding from everyone. She finally confesses that she still agonizes over her dream of becoming a mage even after choosing the path of the sword. Both mages and swordsmen use the same types of circuits in their bodies to channel their power. These circuits are woven deep within their muscles and spirits, but these two powers are totally contradictory. If you try to force magic into a body saturated with sword energy, the circuits go haywire, and your body literally falls apart into pieces. Choosing between being a swordsman or a mage is a choice that locks in the rest of your life. No going back once those circuits are set for good. Oscar puts a hand on her shoulder and gives her some simple advice. He tells her that if she is going to worry about it, she might as well just keep swinging her sword. That is exactly what he did to cope with his own regrets. And before he knew it, he ended up as the strongest sword saint alive, despite his heart belonging elsewhere. She looks up at her master with eyes full of hope, after hearing his surprisingly simple words of encouragement. Later that night, he lies awake in the dark, reflecting on the empty path he has followed for most of his life. The memory of his younger self looking dejected flashes through his mind. Even back then, he felt like he was missing something vital. He reaches toward the moonlight, while wondering if his life would have been better if he had pursued magic instead of steel. Suddenly, his eyes snap open as a strange sensation washes over him. Something is very wrong outside his window. A massive explosion suddenly rips through the building and shatters the quiet night as everything is engulfed in a cloud of fire. The building is engulfed in towering flames while several shadowy figures stand in the distance. They watch the destruction with cold indifference as the fire spreads through the trees. The mysterious attackers surround the wreckage and wait for their prey to emerge so they can finish the job. The leader of the group steps forward and prepares to use his gnarled wooden staff to finish off the survivors once and for all. The mages exchange a few words to confirm their targets are trapped. They seem confident that no one could survive an ambush like this. Our boy leaps out from the burning rubble with his sword already drawn. One of the mages is caught completely off guard by his explosive speed and agility. He quickly realizes he is being hunted by a squad of powerful mages who are following the orders of the man with the staff. The mages do not waste any time and start manifesting glowing shields of energy. They know exactly who they are fighting, and they are taking zero chances with a sword saint. He moves like a blur to dodge a massive bolt of lightning that nearly tears him apart as he closes in for the strike. He reaches the enemy mages in the blink of an eye and delivers a slash powerful enough to cut through the very darkness. Oscar suddenly freezes as his eyes widen in total shock. Something has stopped him dead in his tracks, and it is not magic. The cowards reveal they have taken his apprentice hostage and demand that he lower his sword or the girl will die immediately. The poor girl is shaking with terror while a gag prevents her from saying a word. Tears stream down her face as she realizes her master is in an impossible position because of her. Oscar stands his ground in the middle of the clearing, demanding to know their true purpose. He wants to know why they are going to such extremes just to target him. He tells them he has no memory of living a life that would make people resent him this much. Our boy has always been honorable, so this level of hatred makes zero sense to him. The mage gives a wicked grin and prepares to reveal the true reason why they have gone to such lengths to corner him. They explain that they can never forgive his existence because he possesses an incredible amount of latent magic power alongside his swordsmanship. Oscar looks at them with pure disgust for their twisted logic. He realizes these people are just terrified of what he could become if he ever mastered both arts. A massive magical circle forms in the sky as the mages prepare to rain down shards of ice to end the struggle for good. The apprentice continues to struggle against her captor while screaming behind her gag. She knows her master is about to sacrifice himself, and she is desperate to stop it. Our boy narrows his eyes as he makes a silent decision. He is done talking and is ready to show these bastards why he is called a saint. He grips the hilt of his blade and prepares for the impact. He knows he cannot dodge the next attack without putting the girl in direct danger. The mage screams for him to die and releases the massive ice shards toward the ground. He thinks he has finally won the battle of wills. A cold smile spreads across Oscar's face as he stares down his executioners. He tells them it is too bad their little plan just backfired on them completely. The lead mage is visibly shaken by the look of pure confidence in our boy's eyes. He starts to realize that even a cornered lion is still the king of the jungle. The ice shards rain down with incredible force, and Oscar takes the full brunt of the attack. He stands tall and refuses to move an inch so that his student stays safe even as the ground shatters beneath him. A massive cloud of dust and frost covers the area as the mages watch from the sidelines. They assume no human could possibly survive a direct hit from that spell. The killer smirks as he sees a trail of blood on the ground. He thinks the threat is finally gone and begins to relax his guard. Suddenly, a sword flies through the air and impales the lead mage right through the chest. Our boy is still alive, and he used his final strength to take the bastard down with him while the other mages stand frozen in shock. Oscar stands his ground despite being riddled with ice shards and covered in his own blood. The enemy can't believe he was willing to disregard his own life just to land that final blow. They decide to flee into the night, claiming their purpose has been fulfilled regardless of who survived. Oscar collapses to his knees as the adrenaline finally starts to wear off, and his body gives out on him. The mages vanish into a brilliant pillar of light, their forms dissolving as they offer a final, mocking salute to the Sword Saint. They depart with the cold certainty that their task is done, leaving the dying hero in the arms of his student. The apprentice reaches out in horror as she sees the massive amount of blood pouring from her master's chest. She realizes the wound is fatal, and there is nothing her magic can do to save him. Oscar looks down at his mangled body and manages to crack a weak smile despite the excruciating pain. He knows his journey ends here, but he refuses to let his student see him suffer in his final moments. Tears stream down the girl's face as she stares at her dying master in absolute despair. She can barely breathe as she watches the life slowly drain from the man who taught her everything. She desperately tries to hold his wounds together while begging for forgiveness through her uncontrollable sobbing. Oscar lies broken on the forest floor as he listens to his student's heart-wrenching apologies. The poor girl lets out a soul-shattering scream as she realizes her master is no longer responding to her voice. The silence of the night is broken only by the sound of her crying over his unmoving body. A final memory of a happy day flashes through his mind before everything goes dark. He remembers his dream of being a mage and wonders what might have been. In his final moments, a memory of his childhood dream flashes before his eyes. He always wondered how his life would have changed if he had been born with the gift of a mage instead of a swordsman. Oscar's eyes finally drift shut as the world around him fades into a cold and silent darkness. The legendary sword saint has breathed his last and left his grieving student all alone. His blood-stained hand reaches out toward the full moon one last time before falling limp. It is a tragic and lonely end for a hero who gave everything to protect those he cared about. The sounds of the girls crying become distant and muffled as Oscar's consciousness slips away entirely. Everything he ever knew begins to blur into a hazy memory of blood and starlight. Suddenly, the darkness is replaced by a shimmering array of magical particles that dance in the air. A hand reaches out toward a mysterious light as the world begins to reform around him in a blinding flash. Sunlight filters through a lush green canopy as a hand reaches up to touch the vibrant leaves above. The air feels fresh and full of life, which is incredibly strange for someone who was just dying on a cold battlefield. Our boy stands up in the middle of a beautiful forest, looking very different than he did just moments ago. He is wearing strange leather gloves, and his body feels light and full of energy as he realizes he has been completely healed. He stares up at the sky in utter disbelief as the reality of the situation finally starts to sink in. His mind is racing, because he knows for a fact that he should be dead right now. He wakes up in the middle of a peaceful forest, wondering if this moment of tranquility is a hallucination or the start of a miraculous new life. He overlooks the peaceful village of Eisen, a place that exists only as a painful memory in his past life before the fires of war destroyed everything he loved. The terrifying memories of his final moments come rushing back, forcing him to relive the agonizing sensation of his life's blood soaking into the freezing ground. He notices the mysterious white envelope lying near his training sword, and suddenly realizes this is the exact day his destiny originally took a wrong turn. The impossible truth finally sinks in as he stares at his own youthful face and realizes he has somehow been thrown back into the body of his younger self. Every aspiring warrior or mage in the kingdom eventually reaches this crossroads where they must decide whether to master the arcane arts or the way of the blade. He stares down at the invitations while kneeling on the very same dirt where he once made a decision that doomed him to a life of misery and failure. Clinging to the sealed envelope like a desperate lifeline, he realizes he has been granted a miraculous second chance to fix his broken life. He has returned to the age of 14, standing at the precise moment before he abandoned his true dreams to become a hollow and joyless master of the sword. A towering shadow suddenly looms over him as an imposing figure approaches, radiating a level of power that makes his heart hammer against his ribs in pure instinctual fear. He scrambles backward in a panic and raises his wooden training sword, barely able to find his voice as he looks at a man who should be long dead. The impossible reality finally sets in when he sees his father standing tall with a group of soldiers, looking exactly like the legendary warrior he used to be. He refuses to meet his father's eyes as the heavy burden of his future decisions begins to crush his spirit once again. He recalls how he spent his childhood terrified of revealing his secret admiration for magic to a father who expected him to be a perfect sword master. His father was a living legend who commanded a small army of disciples, and the entire village simply assumed Oscar would inherit that same lethal legacy. He remembers the suffocating coldness of his father's training sessions, where every single movement was corrected with ruthless precision and absolutely no room for error. As a child, he forced himself to wear a mask of enthusiasm just to catch a glimpse of approval from a man who only cared about strength. The crushing weight of his father's pride felt more like a prison than a blessing, trapping him in a role he never wanted to play for the rest of his life. His father's deep-seated hatred for magic poisoned their relationship, as the old man viewed the arcane arts as nothing more than a cowardly crutch for the weak. There was never any room for debate or personal dreams, as his father's commands were absolute laws that dictated he only live for the edge of a blade. He felt like he was drowning under the suffocating pressure of his father's presence, realizing that his own identity was being erased by the man's overwhelming authority. He recalls the agonizing loneliness of his previous death, bleeding out in a frozen wasteland because he spent his entire life living for someone else's expectations. He tightens his grip on the wooden sword with a newfound fire in his soul, swearing that he will never again let his life end in such a pathetic and tragic way. Standing on the edge of the riverbank, he vows to carve out his own destiny and follow the desires of his heart, no matter who he has to defy. The old man senses a dramatic shift in his son's energy, noticing that the timid boy he knew has suddenly been replaced by someone with a sharp, iron will. He meets his father's gaze with a level of maturity and intensity that is impossible for a 14-year-old, showing that he is no longer afraid of anyone's judgment. His father's warrior instincts flare up as he prepares to test the limits of this strange new confidence radiating from his once submissive son. A blinding explosion of golden energy erupts as the master unleashes a swarm of spirit swords, demonstrating the terrifying power that made him a legend across the land. One of the senior disciples lunges forward to attack, but he is instantly repelled by the overwhelming aura of the swords floating around the master. The surrounding students are blown backward by the sheer force of the shockwave, realizing that this training session has escalated into a display of absolute dominance. He remains perfectly still amidst the chaos, analyzing the master's technique with the cold and seasoned eyes of a warrior who has survived 100 battles. The other apprentices watch in horror, convinced that there is no possible way for a young boy to survive such a high-level display of martial prowess. He maintains his composure with an eerie calmness that shocks everyone present, standing tall as if he has faced much greater threats than a mere training exercise. The master is visibly taken aback by his son's defiance, as he fully expected the boy to collapse in fear rather than stand there like an immovable mountain. He finally acknowledges that his son's training hasn't been a waste of time, while the other disciples can only watch in stunned silence as their world is turned upside down. He steps forward to offer a rare sign of physical approval, signaling to everyone that his son has finally earned his respect as a true warrior. The master promises that the entire future of the guild will belong to him if he continues to show this level of dedication and strength. Bitter jealousy begins to fester among the other students as they watch their master hand over everything they've been working for to a young boy. While his father walks away feeling proud and satisfied, he remains behind with a cold plan to destroy every expectation the old man has for his future. He watches the man leave while struggling with a deep sense of guilt, knowing that the path to his own freedom requires him to betray his father's deepest hopes. He feels a rough hand slam into his back with enough force to knock the wind out of him, signaling the arrival of his former bullies. The group crowds around him with predatory smiles, claiming they have been waiting all through the academy break just for the chance to see him again. The group leader is clearly looking for any possible excuse to humiliate Oscar and drag his reputation back down into the dirt. Oscar remembers that these were the same miserable bullies who made his life a living hell during his original childhood. These were the companions his father arranged for him to spar with on a daily basis to build his character. At the time, he thought they were just pushing him to be better at swordsmanship and combat. He was too naive to see the poison in their hearts back then. With his new adult perspective, he realizes they never intended to help him grow, but were simply working together to keep him weak and submissive. Despite being younger and smaller than the others, Oscar's natural talent for the sword was undeniable, frequently leaving his older sparring partners defeated on the ground. They treated their sparring sessions like a chance to vent their frustrations, using Oscar as a human punching bag while delivering every strike with malicious intent. Returning to the present, Oscar faces off against the gray-haired bully who has already taken a combat stance in anticipation of an easy victory. The bully tightens his grip on the wooden sword and prepares to lunge forward, desperate to show off his skills while putting Oscar back in his place. Oscar realizes that the massive gap in talent between them is something that traditional swordsmanship could never hope to bridge. Oscar suddenly turns his back on the group and begins walking toward the river, treating the aggressive bullies as if they are not even worth his time. Oscar ignores their pathetic shouting because he is playing a much more dangerous game than any of these children could imagine. The bully is left completely stunned and furious, unable to comprehend why someone he considers so far beneath him would dare to walk away. The gray-haired leader shouts out a desperate insult to stop him, calling Oscar a coward, while the rest of the group joins in with mocking laughter. Losing his temper completely, the bully charges forward with a roar and swings his wooden blade with enough force to cause a serious injury. Oscar remains completely calm and refuses to even turn around as the attacker closes the distance, showing no fear of the incoming strike. Oscar drops the ultimate bombshell by announcing that he is quitting the sword forever, because he has decided to become a mage. Rayon's opponent isn't holding back even though our boy is completely unarmed. He charges in with a massive swing while shouting that he won't be showing any mercy today. The guy tries to use body reinforcement through Sword Kai to overwhelm him. But Rayon sees right through the amateurish move and prepares to counter the predictable strike. This hothead screams at Rayon to treat the sword like an extension of his own body. He is clearly frustrated that he can't land a single hit. Despite all the aggressive swings and shouts, Rayon just dances around every single attack. It is like he is moving in slow motion compared to this guy. Rayon looks completely bored while his opponent is sweating buckets and swearing. Our boy is just waiting for the perfect moment to end this little spat. The bully's frustration boils over as he screams in desperation. Rayon doesn't miss the opening and prepares to end the duel with a single precise strike. A quick movement and a sudden impact send the wooden training sword flying. The momentum is completely shifted in an instant. A quick movement and a sudden impact send the wooden training sword flying. The momentum is completely gone, and the bully ends up eating dirt while screaming in total shock. Rayon gets right in his face and glares at the bully with an intensity that freezes the guy in his tracks. He wants to make sure this lesson sticks before he walks away from the training ground for good. Rayon delivers a cold lesson to the fallen bully, pointing out the fundamental mistakes in his fighting style. He wants to ensure the guy understands just how wide the gap between them truly is. With the annoying training partner finally out of the way, Rayon takes a breath. He reflects on his past life where his father forced his sword Kai to awaken through brutal methods. Rayon stares at the dusty ground, mentally preparing himself for the difficult task ahead. He knows that changing his path won't be easy. Rayon starts his journey toward a secluded training spot far away from the prying eyes of the family. He needs to find a place where the mana flows naturally through the environment. He makes his way through the dense foliage as the afternoon sun begins to peek through the trees. Every step takes him further away from the path of a swordsman and closer to magic. He pauses for a second to wipe the sweat from his forehead after the long hike. Now that he is deep in the woods, he can finally focus on the theories he has been studying since his rebirth. He finds a massive boulder that seems like the perfect place to sit and begin his work. He is confident that no one will stumble upon him this far out in the wilderness. He remembers a conversation with a kind mage who compared magic to using a watering can. She explained that mana is everywhere in the atmosphere, just waiting to be poured through circuits. Sitting cross-legged on the rock, he wonders if he can truly draw that energy into his own circuits. It is a bold move for a swordsman. Rayon closes his eyes and lets the sounds of the forest wash over him. He is searching for a sensation that most people never find. Everything goes quiet as he reaches deep within himself and the environment. Then something finally starts to shift in his perception. The silence of the forest deepens as Rayon enters a state of total concentration. Then, the world as he knows it begins to transform into something entirely different. Rayon starts to feel the invisible flow of energy as if he is submerged in water. Every living thing around him becomes part of this glowing, swirling current of pure power. Rayon's eyes snap open as his vision is flooded with an incredible sight. For the first time in this life, he is truly seeing the world for what it really is. Rayon is absolutely stunned by the sheer beauty and power radiating from the atmosphere. It is even more incredible than he imagined in his past life. Rayon is left speechless by the raw beauty of the mana surrounding him. He can hardly believe that he managed to reach this level of perception so quickly. He lets out a little chuckle of disbelief while pumping his fists in the air. This moment changes everything for his future plans. Rayon is caught completely off guard by a strange sensation that breaks his focus. His moment of triumph is cut short by an eerie presence looming just out of sight in the clearing. He spots glowing particles of mana floating in the air that do not belong to him. Something powerful is definitely nearby, and it is definitely not a friendly forest animal. He peeks through the foliage to see what caused the commotion. A set of heavy footsteps echoes through the trees, making the ground shake. He follows the trail of destruction and notices the forest has gone completely silent. The lack of any birds or insects confirms that a high-level predator is currently on the hunt. Rayon senses that the natural life in the area has completely vanished. Suddenly, a massive impact shakes the ground right in front of him, putting him on high alert for danger. The dust from the impact begins to settle, revealing the source of the tremor. Rayon prepares himself for the worst as a massive shadow falls across the clearing. Rayon tries to figure out who could have sent such a thing after him. He is still getting his bearings after his meditation session. Rayon tries to analyze the situation while his heart races. He knows he's in no condition to take on a threat of this magnitude after such a long meditation session. Before he can make a move, a sudden surge of magical energy crackles through the air. The space right in front of him seems to warp as something heavy descends from above with massive force. Just as he prepares to fight, a red-haired woman drops from the sky like a comet. She lands gracefully right in the middle of the clearing, catching him totally off guard. A commanding voice rings out from behind him, asking what business he has in this private workshop. Rayon freezes as he realizes he has accidentally intruded on a powerful mage's territory. The stone construct's eyes glow with a menacing red light as it prepares to follow its master's orders. This magical guardian is ready to crush anyone who does not have permission to be here. Rayon stays crouched on the ground while trying to process just how much trouble he is actually in. He needs to choose his next words very carefully if he wants to survive this encounter. This mysterious red-haired lady towers over him with a look of pure authority and suspicion. It looks like our boy's quiet meditation day has officially turned into a fight for his life. Isabelle was a legendary mage who earned her fame on the frozen battlefields of the north. She single-handedly stopped an army of monsters by controlling massive golems with incredible magical power. Known as the life-forging mage, Isabelle carries an aura of absolute authority that would make anyone tremble. Her reputation is built on sheer strength and a legacy of combat that few can match. Rayon finds himself in a desperate situation as he kneels before the legendary hero while bound in heavy chains. Isabelle demands to know which faction sent him before she decides his ultimate fate. Suddenly, the air vibrates as she slams her staff down with a burst of light. This is not just a threat because the magic starts swirling around our protagonist. A massive magic circle glows beneath the prisoner as Isabelle prepares to wipe him out for his silence. Rayon watches in horror as the runes activate and threaten to consume him entirely. Rayon begs her to wait because he has no idea why this is happening. Isabelle just stares back as if she is deciding whether to blink him out of existence. Our boy explains that he did not resist when her people captured him earlier today. He insists he is not her enemy, but talking logic to a hero is tough. Isabelle loses her patience and prepares a lethal blast of mana to end the interrogation permanently. She offers a cold farewell to the nameless intruder before releasing her overwhelming magical energy. Just as the blast is about to hit him, Rayon lets out a desperate scream. He is fighting for his life, and his eyes are shut in pure panic. He shouts that he is not a mage yet, which makes Isabelle pause her attack. Our boy catches his breath while she looks down with total confusion. Isabelle dismisses his words as a pathetic lie and decides to take a much closer look at her prisoner. She forces him to meet her gaze to see if he has the courage to lie to her face. Looking directly into his soul reveals a hidden power that leaves even a legendary hero like her stunned. She realizes this boy is carrying a secret that completely defies the laws of magic. She places her hand on his head, and a surge of energy pulses through him. Isabelle is stunned because his internal mana circuits are breaking all the known rules. The tension finally breaks as the two move to a more comfortable setting to discuss the situation over tea. Rayon is still on edge because he knows he is sitting across from a literal living legend. Isabelle takes a calm sip of her tea and starts explaining why she was so hostile. She's got a lot on her mind and is finally seeing our boy. She admits that everyone treats her like a public enemy regardless of what she does. The room is luxury, but she is actually quite lonely in this cage. Rayon listens as his mouth hangs open because he never imagined the terrifying mage would be this honest. He realizes this might be his only chance to change. Rayon realizes this is the opportunity of a lifetime if he can convince her to take him as a student. He has spent years failing to manipulate Mana, but her presence might finally unlock his true potential. He keeps his eyes locked on Lady Isabel while she elegantly enjoys her drink and weighs her options. The atmosphere shifts from a death sentence to a negotiation that could change his entire future. Rayon looks her in the eye with a gaze filled with both fear and determination. He is sweating bullets, but refuses to look away from her gaze today. Isabel looks back at him with a faint and mysterious smile for the first time. She seems amused by his spirit, despite maintaining her cold and professional exterior. Isabel gives him a chance to walk away with his life, but Rayon refuses to take the easy way out. He remembers the time he almost died in a pool of blood and vows to never give up again. A silent golem servant steps forward to offer a refill as the tension stays high. Isabel keeps her focus locked onto our protagonist who is still sitting there. Our boy thinks hard about his next move while trying to keep his composure. He knows one wrong word could send him packing, but he must prove worth. A strange glint appears in his eye as his hidden powers start to react. This is where things get weird, and the air begins to crackle with energy. Suddenly, Rayon stands up as the tea party is interrupted by something unexpected. Isabel looks up in surprise, while the golem servant starts acting strange in the back. Disaster strikes when the servant golem suddenly malfunctions and pours scalding hot tea directly onto the legendary mage. Rayon warned her that something was wrong, but the machine acted before she could react. Rayon panics and shouts her name while his hands move on their own to help. He is terrified she will blame him for the golem acting like trash. He rushes over with a handkerchief and asks if she is all right while the golem just stands there. It is a chaotic scene that nobody could have predicted. Isabel is completely stunned because her own magical creations have never failed her in such a strange way. She starts to wonder how this boy managed to predict the golem would break down. Our boy reaches out and grabs her arm with the cloth to clean the mess. This physical contact is a huge deal, and Isabel is frozen in shock. She demands an explanation for his incredible intuition, while still trying to process the fact that her golem went haywire. Rayon stays calm under pressure, even though he just laid hands on one of the most powerful women alive. Rayon admits that he could see the flow of mana inside the golem was completely unnatural before it moved. Isabel accepts his help, as she realizes this boy possesses a gift she has never seen before. Our protagonist recalls a lesson where he was told that mana is supposedly invisible to the human eye. He starts to question why he can see the energy currents so clearly when no one else can. Isabel finally takes a seat on the couch, trying to process everything that just happened. She looks completely drained by the whole situation and his talent. He wonders if this unique vision is the talent that the mysterious man mentioned, or if it comes from his past life. His experiences as a master swordsman might be the key to his new magical abilities. Isabel asks to confirm his name, and you can tell her opinion of him just changed completely. She is looking at him with a whole new level of respect and curiosity after that stunt. A devious little smirk creeps onto her face as she plots her next move. She has clearly found something very interesting in our protagonist today. She asks him if he is absolutely certain about this new path. The tension in the room is starting to rise again as they prepare for the next step. Rayon knows he has to be careful with how much he reveals right now. One wrong move could ruin everything he has worked for so far. Isabel admits that he has officially piqued her interest, and she reaches out a hand toward him. This is the start of a very dangerous or very profitable partnership for both of them in this academy. She looks like she is finally ready to see what he is truly capable of doing with his gifts. Rayon gives her a small smile back because he knows he has the upper hand now. He is playing this game perfectly so far, and she is falling for it. They seal the deal with a firm handshake. It is official, and there is no turning back from this partnership for our boy now that she is involved. Isabel starts the lesson by teaching Rayon the complex relationship between the human body and the flow of mana. Isabel uses her golems to hold up a chalkboard while she explains the misconceptions of magic. She is finally treating him like a real student and giving him the secret sauce. Our boy is eager to learn and asks how to actually get the energy moving through his circuits. He is clearly ready to jump straight into the deep end of training. She draws a magic circle and explains that mana needs a formula to follow. Without a proper path, the energy just sits there doing nothing at all. Rayon locks in with intense focus. He is not going to miss a single detail of this explanation from his new teacher, who seems to know her stuff. Isabel presents a sheet of magic paper, inscribed with a specific spell, to see if Rayon is actually capable of controlling his internal energy. Rayon wonders exactly what kind of spell is hidden on that paper in her hand. He can feel the potential power radiating off it already. He is practically glowing with excitement as he takes the paper from her. Most people would be intimidated by this test, but our boy is just hyped to start. Isabel decides to put his skills to the ultimate test and asks if he can handle a special assignment for her. She has a mischievous look on her face as she waits to see if Rayon will actually step up to the plate. Rayon does not hesitate for even a second before saying he will do it. That is the kind of energy we love to see from a protagonist who knows his worth. Deep down, she knows this assignment usually takes a normal person an entire month to finish. She's setting the bar incredibly high for him on purpose. She watches him closely while keeping her thoughts to herself. Isabel is clearly curious to see if he is a genius or just overconfident in his own abilities. Isabel expects that it will take him at least 2 weeks to finish the task, while Rayon settles onto the floor to begin his work. Our boy tries to focus on the feeling of power circulating through his body. It is a strange sensation that he has to master very quickly to succeed. Rayon realizes that controlling mana is exactly like the sword Kai refinement from his past, and begins to direct his consciousness inward. Rayon begins to channel his energy with incredible focus, and releases a massive amount of mana that shakes his very surroundings. He knows he is on the right track as the mana begins to respond to his will. The connection is getting stronger with every passing second of meditation. The mana particles swirl around him like a storm, as he reaches a level of focus that most mages take years to achieve. Rayon finally places his hand on the magic paper and triggers a powerful flash of purple light that signals the spell's activation. Rayon realizes that the mana was right there waiting for him the whole time, and he successfully activates the magic circle on his first try. Mastering magic feels just like learning how to use a brand new pair of legs for the first time. It is a process that requires patience and a total shift in how you perceive the world around you. Just like a baby, you have to fall down a bunch of times while learning how to use your body. Only after failing over and over can you finally stand up on your own 2 feet. Legend says the greatest mages can master mana in an instant, and Rayon is proving that he belongs right at the top with them. Isabel walks up behind him and watches the incredible display of power with wide eyes. She can hardly believe what she is seeing from someone who just started this process. This girl is absolutely losing her mind because she cannot believe he mastered mana on his very first attempt. Usually, it takes years of meditation and practice to even get a spark to show up. She starts wondering if the mana flow actually looked unnatural to him as he was channeling it. It is like he is seeing the world through a completely different lens than everyone else around him. Isabel gazes at him, while questioning if he can actually see the mana particles floating in the atmosphere around them. Rayon just gives her a little smirk and tells her no as if it is not a big deal. He is keeping his cool even though he just did something absolutely impossible for a normal human. Even though he denies it, his eyes reflect a swirling world of mana that normal people could never hope to witness in their lifetimes. He stays remarkably calm, while the magical energy dances around him, as if it finally found someone who truly understands it. While Isabel stands there in total shock, our boy whispers to himself that he is finally experiencing the true sensation of magic. The girl suddenly snaps out of her trance and shouts at him with a huge grin on her face. She is way too excited to keep her composure after witnessing such a legendary moment. She rushes over and gives him a hearty smack on the back to congratulate him on his success. Mastering a complex magic formula on the first try is something people will be talking about for ages. She keeps her hand on his shoulder, while continuing to shower him with praise for achieving something that usually takes years of practice. He thinks back to his childhood when magic seemed like a beautiful and special wonder that could brighten up the entire world. He admits that this magic feels completely different from the beautiful power he remembers as a child, while Isabel watches him with a worried look. He crouches down to point out a specific detail in the formula that seems to be bothering him more than anything else. He points out that the flow of mana in this part of the formula feels weirdly off to him. It reminds him exactly of the strange energy patterns he noticed when he was dealing with the golem earlier. Isabel is completely caught off guard by his question and lets out a shocked gasp. She was expecting him to be happy, not to start critiquing the ancient magical formulas like a seasoned professor. Rayon clenches his fist tightly as he realizes his goals have shifted since he first started this journey. He did not just come here to become a simple mage who follows the rules of others. He looks her in the eye with a burning determination and asks for her honest opinion on the major flaw he just discovered. The shock on her face is priceless as she realizes just how ambitious this young man actually is. She is starting to realize that Rayon might be the most dangerous person she has ever met. She grabs him by the shoulders and starts shaking him out of pure disbelief and excitement. It is like she is trying to make sure he is actually a real human and not some kind of monster. She asks him if he is actually serious about rewriting the entire formula from scratch, since that is a task for legendary masters. A high-ranking official walks through the sunlit corridors of the academy while carrying an air of authority that commands respect from everyone. The students who lost are absolutely reeling from Rayon's overwhelming growth and have no idea how they are going to handle the aftermath. The man from the hallway suddenly appears behind them and asks them exactly what happened. One of the guys jumps out of his skin and turns around with a look of pure terror on his face. They immediately start panicking and making excuses because they are terrified of disappointing this man or becoming the targets of his legendary temper. He stares them down with a cold gaze and demands a full explanation of exactly what happened during the duel earlier that day. The student desperately tries to keep his composure while explaining the situation to the official, who is clearly not in a very good mood. The man listens intently with a sharp look in his eyes as he processes everything he is being told. He is a calculating individual who does not let any piece of information go to waste. He can hardly believe that a talented student like Oscar managed to lose to Rayon given the massive difference in their current power levels. He gives a strict order to make sure Oscar is fully recovered by tomorrow, so that his training can proceed without any further delays. The two underlings bow deeply and shout their agreement as the man starts to walk away from the well. They are just relieved that the conversation is over and they did not get punished for the loss. As he looks up at the bright blue sky, the instructor thinks to himself that the time is finally ripe. He has been waiting for someone to show this much potential for a very long time. A dark smirk creeps onto his face as he wonders if it is finally time to grant Rayon the power of Sword Kai. This is a massive turning point that will change everything for our boy. Later that night, the academy library is filled with the warm glow of candlelight as piles of books sit on the tables. It is the perfect place for a genius to dig deep into the secrets of the world. Isabel sits on a desk and tells Rayon that knowledge is just as important as raw power when it comes to magic. She is trying to mentor him and keep his ego in check after his big breakthrough. She starts posing dramatically and demands that he focus on his studies if he ever wants to master the most complicated magic formulas in existence. This girl is having the time of her life being the teacher and laughs while pointing to her own head. She thinks she has finally found a way to slow Rayon down by burying him in boring research. Isabel blinks and realizes that Rayon has suddenly vanished from the spot where he was standing just a second ago. She is left staring at the empty space with a confused look on her face. Isabel is caught completely off guard when she sees Rayon return with a massive mountain of books, while acting like it weighs nothing at all. She points at the mountain of books and asks him what on earth he thinks he is doing with all of those. Rayon just looks back at her as if carrying half the library is a perfectly normal thing to do. Isabel suddenly remembers something crucial and decides to stop the playful banter so she can share a vital piece of information. She looks him dead in the eye and tells him that she needs to give him a very serious warning. Rayon listens closely, sensing that the fun and games are officially over for the night. She drops a massive bombshell by explaining that his current mana circuits are strictly for magic, and attempting to use Sword Kai will result in his certain death. He finally arrives at the peaceful-looking Eisen village after completing a long and grueling journey across the lands. This guy looks like he has been through absolute hell and back just to reach his childhood home. His eyes are tired, reflecting years of struggle and the weight of a difficult past. He eventually finds his father lying in bed, looking like a shell of the man he used to be. The room is quiet, filled only with the sound of shallow breathing and unspoken regrets. It is a cold and heavy reunion for two people who have spent a lifetime being distant from one another. Our traveler stands over the bed, watching the man who once loomed so large over him. The dying man weakly asks Rayon to come closer so they can finally speak face to face after all these years. It is a heavy moment for our boy as he confronts the man who shaped his difficult past. He places a trembling hand on the boy's shoulder and admits that he always knew there was incredible talent hidden inside him. It is a rare moment of validation from a very harsh man. The old man looks up with a faint smile, while finally acknowledging the incredible potential he sees within his son. A sharp stabbing pain suddenly hits him, as he is overwhelmed by a flood of dark memories from his difficult childhood. The word father echoes in his mind as he stares at the mansion where he spent his most difficult years. Everything looks exactly the same as he remembers, but he is a completely different person now. Our boy looks up at the towering walls, steeling himself for the confrontation he knows is coming next. He has returned with a purpose that will change everything for this family. Rayon walks through the courtyard where a massive fire is burning bright against the darkness of the night. His footsteps are heavy and deliberate as he approaches the man waiting for him. His father is standing there in the shadows, asking if his son finally needs something from him after all this time. The old man looks as stern and uncompromising as ever. Our boy looks him dead in the eye, showing no fear or hesitation in the face of his father's cold gaze. He is done playing the role of the submissive son. He pulls out a document and drops a bombshell by asking for a signature to finalize his future plans. The father looks down, clearly annoyed by what he considers a sudden and trivial request. The old man brushes him off, telling him that this kind of matter can be handled anytime and is not worth the fuss. He clearly does not understand the importance of what is being asked. His expression shifts instantly to pure shock as he looks closer at the paper and realizes what is actually written on it. He can't believe what his son is planning to do. Rayon reveals that he is enrolling in the Magic Academy, and he is never coming back to the family sword style. He looks proud and determined as he delivers the news. You can see the frustration and disbelief boiling over as the father realizes his son is serious about this betrayal of tradition. He rubs his head, wondering where everything went so wrong. Our boy doesn't blink or back down even for a second, knowing that his path has already been decided. He is ready to face whatever consequences come with this choice. He holds out the brush and waits for the old man to either sign the paper or reject him completely. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a blade. The father looks at him with intense, calculating eyes, trying to see if there is any doubt left in his son's heart. He is looking for a weakness that just isn't there anymore. He reaches out with a steady hand, intending to test the boy by searching for the core of his power. It is a moment of truth that will decide their future relationship. He calls the entire idea absolute nonsense, refusing to accept that a child of his could ever be a mage. He places a firm hand on Rayon's chest, trying to sense his aura. But the second he makes contact, he feels the raw, untamed power vibrating through his son's body. It is unlike anything he has ever felt from a swordsman before. Our boy releases a massive surge of mana that nearly blows the old man off his feet, while lighting up the entire courtyard. He tells his father that this was the only way to get him to actually listen and take him seriously for once. The old man can only stare in stunned silence at the display of power. The father yells that he has the talent to be a legendary swordsman, and is throwing his life away on worthless magic. Rayon tells him that he understands his talent, but he simply does not care about the glory of the sword anymore. He is choosing a different life because he knows what he truly wants. The old man is convinced that if Rayon just sticks to being a swordsman, he will reach heights no one else can. He is desperate to keep his son on the path of the family legacy. Our boy explains that success and happiness are two completely different things in this world, while remembering his few moments of true peace. A heavy silence falls over the courtyard as the tension between father and son reaches a dangerous breaking point. He asks his son if he has forgotten the danger of having two conflicting powers flowing through his circuits at once. He is willing to risk his son's life just to prove a point. The father coldly asks what it matters if his son dies, while trying to fix the mistake of learning magic. He grabs the hilt of his blade and threatens to beat the stubborn nature out of his son by force. Rayon realizes that the violent day he feared never actually arrived because his father died before he could ever follow through. The old man points his blade at the boy and demands that he go arm himself for a duel. He claims he will wait for his son to be ready before teaching him a lesson he will never forget. Our boy looks at his father with cold and empty eyes as he realizes there is no reasoning with this man. Rayon holds up the invitation and reminds the old man one last time that he has chosen the path of magic. In a final act of total defiance, he tosses the invitation into the fire and watches his father's legacy turn to ash. The young protagonist stands his ground and issues a daring challenge. Rayon tells his father that surviving a bit of pressure isn't nearly enough to make him back down from this fight. Rayon's father refuses to hold back and unleashes a barrage of purple sword aura to teach his son a lesson. Even as the strikes narrowly miss him, Rayon stays calm because he can track the flow of energy like he is reading a book. The air practically screams as the father unleashes a flurry of strikes that would shred any normal warrior into pieces. It is a terrifying display of pure power and speed meant to overwhelm. Our hero manages to dodge the devastating wave of power and admits that his father truly lives up to his reputation. The father stands his ground and realizes that dodging all those strikes without any aura enhancement is actually insane. He knows for a fact that nobody else in the entire guild could pull that off. He has to give credit where it is due and admits that Rayon's natural talent with the blade is absolutely genuine. He is finally seeing that his son is not just talking big. He offers one last chance for Rayon to give up this magic nonsense and accept the legacy of the sword. The purple aura flares up around him as he prepares to end this confrontation. Rayon looks back at him and asks if this is what he meant by beating the choice out of him. He is starting to realize his father is just trying to break his spirit through force. A confident smirk plays on Rayon's lips as he asks if the old man is just frustrated that he can't win. Our boy is really poking the bear now, and he knows exactly what he is doing. His father calls him a foolish boy as his frustration finally starts to boil over into genuine anger. He cannot believe his son is being this stubborn about throwing his life away. Rayon prepares to drop some truth on the old man about what truly matters in this world. He knows that to his father, talent is everything, but he has a different perspective. He declares that there is something he refuses to give up on no matter what kind of pressure he faces. He reaches for something tucked into his belt that definitely is not a weapon. The old man is totally confused and assumes Rayon is talking about his potential with the sword. He is still stuck in his old ways, unable to see anything beyond his own path. Instead of a blade, Rayon pulls out a simple quill and holds it up with a bright, defiant smile. He is basically telling his father that he is going to write his own destiny. His eyes are cold and focused as he stares down the most powerful man he knows. This is the moment where the old legacy officially clashes with a brand new power. Rayon warns his father that there are secrets about his growth that the old man cannot possibly understand yet. The father loses his patience and charges in for one final strike to settle the score once and for all. He is done talking and wants to prove that the sword always wins. Time seems to slow down as our protagonist identifies the perfect opening to finish this duel once and for all. The father is completely stunned when his massive heavy sword is blocked by a tiny but incredibly dense magic circle. A brief memory of his younger self flashes through his mind as he finally executes the magic he always wanted. This is the culmination of years of secret practice and longing. Our boy remembers being a small child and staring up at the stars, dreaming of a power that was forbidden. He felt that spark in his heart long before he ever picked up a sword. The magical energy begins to swirl and condense into a single point of blinding light. This is not just a simple trick. It is a high-level spell being cast in record time. He whispers the name of the spell, Spark Spissa, and the air around them begins to crackle with electric intensity. This is the moment the father realizes he completely underestimated his son. The father's eyes go wide with total shock as he feels the raw magical power surging right in front of him. He never expected his son to actually be capable of such refined magic. The spell erupts in a flash of light, knocking the sword aside and sending a shockwave directly into the old man. It is a clean hit that leaves him completely defenseless for a second. He recoils in pain while holding his face, unable to process the fact that he was just bested by magic. He realizes too late that Rayon has been hiding his true strength this whole time. Rayon blurs behind him with godlike speed, moving so fast that he becomes nothing more than a shadow. He has already won the fight, and the old man has not even realized it yet. His father desperately tries to track his movement, but his senses are scrambled by the lingering magical energy. He wonders if the spell was just a distraction for a physical follow-up. The massive blade remains stuck deep in the wooden floor, while Rayon stands over it as the clear winner of the duel. Rayon explains that he knew his father would only try to sense his physical presence during the exchange. He exploited the old man's reliance on traditional warrior instincts to land the deciding blow. The father is sweating and gritting his teeth in total humiliation as he realizes he was played like a fiddle. His pride is shattered, but he can no longer deny the truth. Rayon looks down at him and says that he actually learned how to exploit weaknesses like that from his father. It is the ultimate burn to use the old man's own teachings against him. The old man finally lets out a sigh and admits that Rayon's talent with the sword really is incredible. He is finally looking at his son as a man instead of a rebellious child. Rayon just closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, feeling a massive weight lift off his shoulders. He finally got the acknowledgement he needed, even if it came through a fight. The father's expression softens for the first time as he stares at the son he barely even knows anymore. He is seeing the face of the woman he loved reflected in Rayon's blue eyes. He remembers a time when things were much simpler, and he was not obsessed with legacy and duty. A wave of regret washes over him as he thinks about the family he almost destroyed, a warm memory of a sunlit room filled with the promise of a happy future. Everything was bright and full of life back then, before the bitterness took over. A younger version of the father sits with his pregnant wife, laughing together about their future child. He asks if she thinks the baby will take after him and become a great hero. She just smiles softly while wiping away a tear of joy, looking absolutely radiant in the morning light. They were so full of hope for the life they were about to bring into the world. She looked so peaceful and happy, wanting nothing more than for her son to be healthy and free. It is a heart-wrenching contrast to the cold man her husband eventually became. Back in the present, the father admits he always expected Rayon to become a legendary sword saint one day. He had a specific path laid out for him that he never bothered to question. He turns his back on Rayon and begins to walk away into the darkness of the training grounds. The tension is gone, replaced by a strange sense of finality and quiet acceptance. Rayon calls out to him, but the old man just keeps walking without looking back a single time. He is finally letting go of the control he tried so hard to maintain over his son. The father hands over a formal letter of recommendation that will serve as Rayon's ticket into the world of magic. Rayon stares back in disbelief as he holds his quill, completely caught off guard by his father's sudden change of heart. The father gives a small, knowing smirk as he tells Rayon that he won't be able to sign that with a quill. He is acknowledging his son's choice, but still challenging him to prove himself. The massive spires of the Magic Academy tower over the landscape as the new school year finally begins for the elite. An official is looking over a stack of enrollment documents, focusing on a photo of a very familiar student. The names on the list are all from the most prestigious families in the empire. Word spreads through the faculty that high-ranking nobles, and even the princess herself, will be joining the upcoming class of students. The faculty is excited because these students have already mastered basic spells and even their own family's heirloom magic. The competition is going to be fierce and potentially very dangerous. Students are arriving at the Grand Hall, each one carrying the weight of a powerful bloodline and heavy expectations. The atmosphere is thick with ambition as the new semester begins to unfold. A mysterious man with a monocle smiles as he looks over the list of new Saint class bloodlines. He seems delighted by the prospect of having so many powerful pawns in one place. Rayon finishes signing the enrollment documents as he officially begins his journey to become a master of the mystic arts. Our story kicks off with this guy looking pretty contemplative outside a massive cathedral. He is clearly at a crossroads in his life, and the weight of what comes next is weighing heavy on his mind. He turns back with a look of genuine concern for someone he cares about. You can tell he is trying to be the supportive mentor, even if he is worried about the road ahead. Brian finally makes his entrance looking fresh and ready for anything, while radiating some serious protagonist energy in his new travel gear. The older man reminds Brian that countless people have spent their entire lives trying to master the art of magic. It is not exactly a walk in the park, and the competition is going to be fierce. He admits he might not be the best person to give advice, but he tells Brian this is the path he chose. His final words are a warning to never let himself be broken by what he finds out there. Brian does not seem worried at all, as he confidently promises that he will be just fine, while heading into the dangerous unknown. He tries to put his friend's mind at ease with a heartfelt goodbye, before he finally sets off on his grand new journey. The mentor closes his eyes, perhaps realizing that there is nothing more he can say to stop him. He is just hoping that the training they did together will be enough to keep the kid alive. With a casual wave, Brian announces he is heading out. He walks away from the only life he has known, heading toward a future filled with spells and sorcery instead of just cold steel. In his hand, he is clutching an official document with his name, Brian, signed at the bottom. This paper is his golden ticket into a world he has only ever dreamed of joining. He looks back one last time with a smirk, feeling the spark of excitement for the first time. The transition from sword user to magic user is officially underway, and he is not looking back. The heavy wooden doors of the academy creak open as he finally steps through the threshold and leaves his old life behind forever. The sunlight pours through the entrance, making the whole place feel divine and untouchable. This is the moment Brian realizes that things are about to get very real, very fast. He steps out and is greeted by a sight straight out of a fairy tale. The Kirk National Magic Academy is a massive, sprawling castle that looks like it was built by the gods themselves. Magical energy bursts through the air everywhere he looks as students practice their spells, while a band of gnomes provides a chaotic musical backdrop. Two students zoom right over his head on brooms, laughing as they weave through the air. Brian just stands there like a total newbie, trying to process that people actually live like this every day. Brian realizes he is finally standing in the legendary Kirk National Magic Academy. The vibe here is a total 180 from the stiff, disciplined atmosphere he grew up with at the Sword Academy. He spots a group of tiny gnomes marching in a line, banging on drums and blowing trumpets like a miniature parade. This place is seriously weird, and Brian is trying his best to keep his cool. He immediately starts analyzing the magic behind these creatures to prove he has the brain power to become a top-tier sorcerer. Suddenly, a voice calls out, warning him that if he keeps dawdling, he is going to be late for his enrollment. He turns around to see who is calling him out in the middle of his gnome-watching session. It is Isabel, looking as sharp as ever with her long red hair and a knowing smirk. She's clearly been waiting for him and is ready to show him the ropes of this crazy academy. Brian catches up to her, mentioning that he can do way more now than he could just 6 months ago. Isabel looks intrigued, telling him she is definitely looking forward to seeing what he can actually do. He looks a bit surprised by her enthusiasm, wondering if he has already bitten off more than he can chew. These two have a fun dynamic, but the pressure of the academy is already starting to build. Brian points toward a massive building, asking where everyone is heading in such a hurry. It seems like the entire student body is migrating toward one specific spot for something big. Isabel explains that if she remembers correctly, they are currently holding the first-class placement exam over there. That is where the real elites are separated from the average magic users. She breaks it down for him, explaining that new students are split into classes based on their raw mana levels. It is a brutal system designed to filter out anyone who is not naturally gifted. She points out that the top-tier group is known as the first class. Brian looks a bit nervous now, realizing that the bar for entry is way higher than he initially thought. The exam is basically a giant meat grinder to sort out the true geniuses from the rest. Only those with immense natural talent can even hope to stand a chance at making the cut. Isabel drops a bombshell, telling Brian that he absolutely should not take the first-class exam. Our boy is completely blindsided, wondering why his friend is already counting him out. She explains that the students who actually get into that class are nothing short of total monsters. They are not just good. They are supernatural anomalies that redefine what magic can actually do. These kids have been raised around high-level magic since they were in diapers. They have a lifetime of elite training that Brian simply cannot match after just 6 months of study. Brian gets that manic, excited look in his eyes, thinking that just means they teach the best magic there. He is not intimidated. He is actually more motivated now that he knows it is a challenge. Isabel just facepalms, realizing that nothing she says is going to stop this guy. She's seen that look before, and she knows Brian is too stubborn to take the easy way out. She tells him that if he is really that curious, he should just go see the exam for himself. She figures that seeing the gap in power with his own eyes might finally talk some sense into him. He joins the rest of the students to witness the high-stakes entrance exams where a powerful water spell creates an absolute spectacle for the crowd. The targets are blasted apart by bursts of water magic, creating a spectacle for the crowd watching from the sidelines. It is a solid performance, but the real heavy hitters haven't even stepped up yet. The student celebrates his success, thinking he did a great job while Brian watches from the crowd. Brian realizes the goal is simple, just hit the target with magic, but he knows there is more to it. He senses a group of elite students watching from the shadows, their eyes glowing with an eerie, predatory light. These are the monsters Isabel was talking about, and they do not look friendly. Brian starts to feel the pressure, realizing that someone is staring him down from the crowd. He can feel the intense gaze of someone way more powerful than anyone he has met so far. He turns his head sharply as he notices a mysterious silver-haired man whose very presence makes the cheerful atmosphere of the courtyard vanish. The newcomer is Zazen of House Regresses, and he is a total elitist prick from the start. He tells Brian that this place is no home for a commoner like him, and he should probably just leave. Zazen looks down on him with pure disgust, as if Brian is a stain on the floor of the academy. He represents the old-school noble families who think magic belongs only to the blue-blooded elite. Brian just stares at him, not even bothering to argue with the guy. He is taking in every detail of Zazen's posture and presence, sizing up his first real rival in this magic world. The other students around them start snickering, clearly enjoying the way the noble is putting the newcomer in his place. It is a toxic environment, and Brian is the target of everyone's mockery. Everything Isabel said starts to click in Brian's head. This class really is full of monsters who think they are gods, and they have no intention of letting an outsider join their ranks. Zazen rudely shoves Brian aside to take the spotlight for himself. He demands that our hero stays quiet and watches closely to see the massive gap in their magical abilities. Zazen unleashes a massive magic circle and begins his incantation to show off his superior heritage. He channels his mana into an advanced ice spell that is meant to intimidate anyone standing in his way. A colossal wave of ice spikes erupts from the ground, shattering the targets into 1,000,000 frozen pieces. The crowd is absolutely stunned by the raw power and precision Zazen just put on display. Brian is staring wide-eyed at the destruction, but it is not out of fear. He is analyzing the flow of mana, breaking down the mechanics of the spell like he is looking for a weakness. The surrounding crowd erupts in cheers for the genius noble and his overwhelming display of power. Zazen smugly turns to Brian and reminds him that those who cannot use proper magic have no business being here. Brian quietly admits that it really is an amazing spell, acknowledging the years of effort it must have taken to master. He can tell that Zazen has poured his entire soul into honing his craft. But then Brian drops the ultimate insult, saying the whole display was a complete waste. Zazen turns around, his face twisting in rage as he demands to know what the hell Brian just said. Witnessing such a high-level spell triggers memories of Brian's own years of grueling training and hidden effort. He realizes his hard work actually paid off, and he finally feels confident enough to face these monsters. The spectators are already talking trash, laughing at Brian for pulling out a simple wand pen that looks like a cheap toy. They are absolutely convinced there is no way a loser like him can even hit a single target with such a pathetic tool. Zazen is watching closely, noticing that despite all the insults, our boy has this weird sense of confidence about him. This genius noble is still riding the high from his own performance, convinced his ice magic was absolutely flawless and unbeatable. Zazen prides himself on being a member of the elite house of Regresses, and knows his ice magic is flawless. However, he starts to question why he is even taking a simple entrance exam so seriously when his victory should be guaranteed. Suddenly, the moving targets start zipping across the field, signaling the start of the next phase of the exam for everyone. The examiner is actually impressed by the massive scale of Zazen's performance and notes that he is definitely the top candidate for the new semester. She records his score while realizing that the House of Regresses has produced another incredible magical prodigy. But she looks over at Brian and gets this uneasy feeling that something is not quite right with the situation. While everyone else is busy showing off, she wonders what on earth this guy has been doing just standing there like a statue. He hasn't even made a move yet. The hecklers in the back are getting louder, screaming for him to just pack it up and go home if he is too scared to aim. But the examiner sees the truth, realizing Brian isn't shaking or nervous at all. He is actually just waiting for the perfect opening to strike. Brian locks onto his targets and casually chants a basic fire spell that looks completely ordinary to the untrained eye. The examiner's eyes immediately widen in shock as she senses a terrifying level of mana control hidden beneath the simple incantation. With absolute precision, Brian fires a single, concentrated beam of fire that threads through every single target on the field. It is a terrifying display of efficiency that completely bypasses the need for multiple flashy explosions or wasted energy. The targets fall to the ground with tiny, perfect holes burned right through their centers as Brian calmly turns his back on the crowd. The other students are totally confused and mockingly assume his magic was too weak to even trigger a proper explosion. The clueless crowd starts jeering and calling the performance a failure since it lacked the impact of the previous noble's ice magic. Even Zazen looks down on him with contempt, thinking the whole display was just a pathetic waste of time. The examiner just stands there in silence, her brain trying to calculate the insane level of precision it took to pull that off. She finally breaks, her eyes going wide as the reality of his skill finally starts to sink into her mind. Brian stands there looking slightly awkward as he realizes his performance might have been a bit too impressive for a simple entrance exam. He didn't expect the examiner to be so completely blown away by a basic utility spell. She rushes over, stammering and asking him why on earth he would even try such a risky move during an entrance exam. It makes no sense to the examiner why he didn't just play it safe and take the targets down one by one with absolute certainty. She is practically screaming at him now, demanding to know if that insane display of precision was actually calculated. The examiner is in total denial and yells at the boy to stop playing around with her. She is desperate for him to admit that his incredible display of timing was nothing more than a stroke of lucky timing. Brian is thinking that Zazen's magic was certainly impressive, but it was just far too much waste for a simple test. Looking back at the remnants of the flashy ice magic, Brian realizes that such high-level spells are often just a massive waste of mana. He knows that on a real battlefield, being flashy is just a quick way to get yourself killed by a more efficient opponent. Brian simply looks the examiner in the eye and tells her that he is finished with his turn, acting as if his god-tier performance was nothing special. His calm demeanor only makes the woman even more confused about his true identity and background. He explains that since this exam simulates real combat against monsters, He chose to conserve his mana instead of wasting it on flashy spells. He treats every test like a life-or-death struggle where efficiency is the only thing that matters for survival. The examiner is left stunned by his cold, logical reasoning, finding it impossible to argue with such a practical outlook. She finally starts to see the wisdom in his unconventional approach and admits to herself that his tactical reasoning is actually quite sound. The examiner begins to analyze his incredible performance, realizing he possesses the keen eyes to read movement and the iron nerves to wait for the perfect strike. She admits that while his spell wasn't flashy, his level of control is far beyond any freshman. As the boy walks away, the examiner sees the imposing silhouette of a legendary figure standing behind him instead of a simple student. She is left with the chilling realization that this candidate is operating on a level that dwarfs everyone else in the stadium. He has this small, satisfied smile on his face, probably glad that the boring testing part is finally over and done with. He continues walking through the academy grounds with a satisfied look on his face, feeling relieved that the boring testing part is finally over. He doesn't seem to have a care in the world as he heads toward his next destination. His calm expression shifts the moment he spots a familiar and powerful figure waiting for him up ahead in the middle of the path. He stops in his tracks and stares at the newcomer, sensing an overwhelming aura that he wasn't expecting to encounter so soon. Balsamis, the legendary headmaster of the Kirk Magic Academy, makes a grand entrance that leaves everyone in awe. He stands there with a massive staff and a commanding presence that proves why he is the one running this entire institution. Brian immediately drops into a deep, respectful bow the moment he realizes he is standing in the presence of the academy principal. He tries to follow the proper etiquette of a freshman while hiding the fact that he is feeling incredibly nervous. A sudden and chilling realization washes over the boy as he spots a familiar glowing pendant hanging from the headmaster's neck. His eyes go wide with pure terror as he recalls a face from a hidden past he never wanted to see again. The headmaster looks directly at Oscar with a questioning expression while asking him why he has suddenly gone silent. He tells the boy to go on and give his proper greeting, seemingly unaware of the absolute panic he has just caused. Oscar is paralyzed with fear when he realizes the man standing before him is the exact same mage who killed him in his past life. He struggles to keep his composure while the headmaster casually asks him what is wrong. The headmaster holds out his hand and tells the boy to offer a proper greeting like a respectful student. Oscar can barely breathe, let alone act polite, while facing the man who once murdered him. Without warning, the legendary mage unleashes a terrifying vortex of wind that nearly sends the boy flying backward. Oscar barely manages to steady himself as the sheer pressure of the magic threatens to crush his body. The headmaster floats effortlessly on a cushion of air while questioning if the boy avoided the attack through pure intuition. Oscar isn't taking any chances and draws his blade while demanding to know if the man has come to kill him. The headmaster mockingly asks if such a small weapon could ever hope to defeat a master of the mystic arts. Oscar grips his dagger tightly while preparing for the fight of his life against a monster from his past. The headmaster swings his ornate staff to conjure a violent gale that traps his opponent in place. This isn't just a simple breeze, but the signature power of the Stormcaller meant to test the boy's limits. Oscar realizes he is trapped inside a high-level wind barrier with absolutely no room to escape. He knows he has to act fast, or he will be torn apart by the swirling currents of mana surrounding him. The young student acknowledges that he is backed into a corner with no hope of running away. If he wants to survive this encounter, he has no choice but to fight his way through the legendary mage. Our boy slams his hand down and activates a complex magic circle right under his feet. He is not going down without a fight today. Instead of panicking, Oscar counterattacks with a concentrated fire bullet spell that cuts right through the defensive gale. The headmaster's eyes go wide as he witnesses the raw talent and speed of the boy's reaction. The fire crashes against the wind barrier, creating a massive explosion. Brian is already prepping his next move before the smoke can even clear away. The headmaster realizes that the boy never intended to break the barrier spell in the first place. Oscar went straight for the source to take out the caster instead of wasting energy on the defense. A small, mysterious smile creeps across the old man's face. It looks like he just found exactly what he was looking for in a student. Oscar is left blinking in confusion as the violent winds and the lethal pressure suddenly vanish into thin air. He can no longer feel even a shred of the killing intent that was suffocating him just moments ago. He drops into a defensive crouch, still clutching his dagger tight. He does not trust this sudden change in atmosphere for one single second. The headmaster lands softly and explains that the boy would have been the one to die if he hadn't fought back with the intent to kill. He reveals that this entire life-threatening encounter was actually a secret test of survival instincts. Oscar is totally drained from the encounter and can barely keep his knees from buckling under the remaining pressure. The headmaster just sits there casually in midair, as if they had not just been in a life-or-death battle. The headmaster explains that many people in the academy treat magic as a privilege for the elite and will crush anyone who stands out. He admits that he wanted the boy to experience that dangerous reality firsthand. The legendary mage admits that he completely underestimated the true depths of the potential hidden within the young man. He looks at his new student in a whole new light after seeing such a fierce counterattack. Oscar finally connects the dots and asks if the headmaster was trying to show him that standing out makes him a target. He realizes that being talented in this world means constantly being hunted by those in power. The headmaster confirms it and explains there are extremists who hate the idea of talented commoners. They will do anything to keep their status. Those words trigger a dark memory deep within Oscar's mind of the day he was betrayed and murdered. He hears the same cold voice from his past life, declaring that his existence can no longer be allowed. The image of his killer flashes through his mind with terrifying clarity. That man was obsessed with wiping out anyone with overwhelming talent and potential. Oscar demands answers with a desperate look in his eyes while asking who those extremists really are. He remembers his killers saying something very similar and needs to know who he is up against in this life. Balsamis goes quiet for a moment, his expression turning incredibly serious. He is clearly weighing how much he should actually reveal to the boy. The silence stretches on as the old man stares him down with those piercing eyes. The weight of the world seems to settle on the plaza. The tension finally breaks as the headmaster prepares to take his leave from the courtyard. Oscar stands there alone while still reeling from the shocking information he just learned about his dangerous situation. He realizes that if he wants to survive this life, he needs the strength to protect himself. This test proved he is still far from safe. Oscar closes his eyes and takes a shaky breath to calm his nerves after the intense confrontation. Sweat is still pouring down his face from the overwhelming pressure he felt while facing the headmaster. He looks back up at the headmaster, noticing a specific detail he missed before. Something about the man's outfit catches his eye and sparks curiosity. A unique pendant hanging from the old man's neck glows with a steady and powerful light that feels ancient. This jewel radiates a level of magical pressure that makes the air itself feel heavy and dangerous. Oscar points toward the glowing jewelry and asks what the mysterious object is supposed to be. He can feel an intense amount of magical energy radiating from the core of the small purple jewel. Balsamis touches the jewel and explains it is the proof of a magic saint. It is the ultimate mark of authority in their world. Our boy is absolutely floored by that revelation. He is standing face to face with one of the most powerful beings in all of existence. He realizes a magic saint is the highest possible rank for any mage. Before Brian can process that, Balsamis tosses him a small golden badge. Oscar catches the small badge in his gloved hand and feels a strange weight behind the simple design. He realizes this tiny object likely carries an incredible amount of political power and protection within the academy. Without saying another word, the headmaster disappears into a massive whirlwind of magic. He warns the boy not to lose that badge because it will be the key to surviving the dangers ahead of him. Our boy stares at the emblem in his palm, lost in his own thoughts. His plans for a quiet school life are officially gone. He originally thought it would be enough to just study magic and live peacefully. He wanted to leave his past life behind forever, but the memories of his brutal death are not going away anytime soon. He can still feel the cold bite of the blade in his back. His previous existence ended in a brutal betrayal because his enemies were terrified of his overwhelming natural talent. Then the realization hits him like a freight train. There was a magic saint among the group that murdered him in his previous life. He knows the enemies who took his life are still out there, and he refuses to let them catch him off guard again. He refuses to let history repeat itself, and is prepared to become the ultimate hunter instead of the prey. We move to the main hall, where the elite students are already gathered. Everyone is gossiping about the commoner who aced the selection exam. One arrogant noble is already disgusted by the rumors, believing that no lowly peasant could ever be worthy of joining the elite class. The chatter dies down as a door at the bottom of the room swings open. Someone new is finally entering the lion's den to start class. The arrogant elite student attempts to look down on the newcomer, but the sheer weight of Brian's aura leaves him paralyzed. The entire class is stunned into silence as the figure walks in. They were expecting a nervous commoner, but they got a powerhouse instead. The smug student loses his cool the moment he gets a good look at the newcomer. He clearly did not expect this level of presence. Brian walks into the center of the room with total confidence. He is finally here to claim his spot, and everyone knows everything has changed. For now, the only thing that matters is gaining enough power to protect what is important. Our boy is deep in his meditation, feeling the energy flow through him as he hones his skills. He can feel the mana pulsing like a heartbeat, strengthening every single fiber of his being. He realizes that by repeatedly releasing his mana, he can increase the amount of energy his circuits are able to handle in the future. The sun begins to peek through the window, signaling the end of his intense morning training session. Brian stares out at the morning sky, taking a quiet moment to appreciate how far he has come. He clenches his hand, noticing that the duration he can maintain his mana release is steadily growing. A sudden chime breaks his concentration, reminding him that it is time to face the day at the academy. He throws on his vest and gets ready, knowing that his presence alone is going to turn heads today. This is the first time in his life he has felt this burning desire to truly become a powerhouse. He finishes adjusting his gloves and prepares to step out into the lion's den. As Brian walks into the lecture hall, the atmosphere changes instantly as every eye locks onto him. The white-haired student is completely stunned when he sees the protagonist and tries to figure out how he changed so much in such a short time. Suddenly, he spots a beautiful bookmark drifting slowly toward the floor near a girl sitting at a desk. He catches it midair with lightning-fast reflexes before it even touches the dusty wooden floorboards. Brian leans over and asks the girl if the bookmark belongs to her with a calm, friendly smile. The girl looks up, her eyes widening in surprise as she realizes someone actually helped her out. He can tell she is a fan of nature, so he casually mentions that she must really like flowers. She is totally caught off guard by his observation, blushing as she wonders how he knew her preferences. Our boy asks if he can take the seat next to her, and she happily invites him to join. He looks around the room and thinks to himself that everyone seems to have finally gathered for class. A sudden, powerful voice booms through the hall, making several students jump out of their skins. A sudden whirlwind of documents explodes throughout the lecture hall as the students look around in total confusion to see where the noise is coming from. As the documents continue to fall around the room, a mysterious woman finally makes her entrance and casually greets the entire class. It turns out their instructor is a sharp, authoritative woman who is not here to play games at all. She announces that she will be in charge of this specific group of first-class elites. Brian immediately recognizes the woman as the instructor from his entrance exam and realizes that everyone in this room has already proven they have immense talent. Then she drops some big news, announcing that combat classes against actual monsters will begin as soon as next week. A smirk plays on Brian's lips as he realizes things are finally about to get interesting around here. He clenches his fist on the desk, feeling the excitement of finally getting to test his newfound strength. The instructor explains that they will be forming parties of 5 to keep the training groups balanced and fair. One of the students pipes up, asking if the balance is based entirely on their raw magic power. She confirms his suspicion, explaining that it is all about the total amount of mana their bodies can hold. The room falls quiet as everyone starts looking at each other, already trying to scout out the strongest allies. A knowing glint appears behind the instructor's glasses as she prepares to reveal their actual power levels. She tells the class that she has already finished measuring them and activates a massive glowing magic circle. The golden light fills the room as the system begins to process the data of every student present. Strange glowing orbs begin to manifest above the heads of several students, representing their current mana capacity. The girl sitting next to Brian looks up in awe, watching as her own light begins to stabilize. The silver-haired student shows off an incredibly bright orb that proves exactly why he believes he is the most talented person in the entire room. Even the quiet students who were keeping to themselves are now being exposed by the sheer brilliance of their mana. The instructor is visibly impressed, noting that several students in this batch are already at the mage tier level. Brian looks up and sees his own reading, but he is more focused on the reactions of the people around him. A group of arrogant students start whispering and giggling behind their hands, clearly looking for someone to mock. They scoff and joke that a commoner is always going to be a commoner, assuming his power must be pathetic. Oscar brushes off the insults and tells himself that now is not the time to be distracted by their petty drama. Suddenly, a soft hand taps him on the shoulder, pulling him out of his internal monologue. The girl from before is looking at him with a hopeful expression, clearly having made a quick decision. The girl is overjoyed that Oscar saved her precious bookmark, and starts to realize that having such a skilled partner might be exactly what she needs. She tells him she wants to team up, but admits they will have to check with a guy named Levin first. Oscar repeats the name while wondering just what kind of person this Levin guy is and what kind of power he holds. Levin displays a cocky attitude and acts like he already owns the entire academy before the lesson even starts. Oscar steps up and tells the group he would truly appreciate it if they would let him join their party. Levin stares him down while trying to measure Oscar's worth with a single judgmental look that could kill. He sighs and mutters that protecting the weak is supposed to be a noble's duty, sounding incredibly arrogant. Levin gives him a smug grin and says he will take Oscar along, but only as a glorified luggage carrier. While the rest of the class continues to form their groups, Oscar walks away with his new teammate, while the other students gossip about his strange situation. The girl looks at Oscar apologetically and tells him not to let those harsh words get under his skin. As they walk through the massive hallway together, she gets curious and asks Oscar how long he has been training in the ways of magic. Oscar stops in his tracks for a second as he reflects on the short time that has passed since he first began his journey. The two of them continue through the expansive, high-ceilinged hallway as she remains silent, trying to make sense of the unbelievable information he just shared. She is left completely speechless as she tries to wrap her head around the fact that he reached this level in such a short time. Oscar just keeps moving forward with a calm face, leaving his new partner completely baffled by his impossible rate of growth. Professor Ruth is heading out when Zazan calls her back to chat for a moment. He stops her right outside the hall to discuss the new batch of students and his concerns about their potential. This guy Zazan starts talking trash and claims the boy can barely use magic because his mana is so pathetic. He is convinced that a commoner like Oscar has no business being in the first class and will definitely fall behind. Ruth drops a massive truth bomb that completely changes the trajectory of the conversation. She points out that Oscar only awakened to his magic 6 months ago and asks if the teacher would still be talking trash after hearing that. Zazan is completely floored by the news, looking like he just saw a ghost right in front of him. He cannot believe that a total beginner has already reached such a high level of power. She casually walks away, confidently stating that the boy is only going to get way more powerful from here. She has full faith in his growth, while the other teachers are still scratching their heads. She casually walks away while confidently stating that the boy is only going to get way more powerful from here on out. Zazan is left standing there completely speechless while she heads off to the next meeting. Ruth pushes her glasses up with a mysterious smirk because she clearly enjoys how shocked her colleague is right now. She mentions that this incredible potential is exactly why the upcoming field training is going to be so interesting. The classroom sits empty and quiet, a stark contrast to the intense magical growth about to be tested. Soon this room will be filled with students who have survived their first real mission. She explains the magic hierarchy and mentions that the boy already possesses the mana level of a mage adept. This puts him leagues ahead of where any normal apprentice should be after such a short amount of time. Back with our boy, his friend is buzzing with excitement while he tries to process everything he just learned. He looks a bit overwhelmed by the sudden expectations being placed on his shoulders. Oscar realizes that being at the mage adept level means he is actually expected to be deployed against real monsters soon. It is a huge step up from just practicing spells in a safe classroom environment. His friend is basically his #1 hype woman, cheering him on because she knows his hard work. She is so proud to see him moving up the ranks so quickly. Oscar is having a bit of an existential crisis while wondering if this sudden talent is actually real or just a fluke. He finds it hard to believe he reached the apprentice rank so fast while everyone else is cheering for him. Oscar pulls his friend aside to get the real scoop on what is going on with the local power dynamics. He specifically asks about her connection to Levin, because he can tell there is some serious tension between them. She explains that Levin's family is a massive, noble house, and people follow them for protection and influence. She shows him how everyone basically treats the guy like a god just to stay safe. The two continue their conversation in the hall while trying to prepare for the massive challenges ahead of them today. It is clear they have a strong bond that is about to be tested out in the forest. Oscar looks pretty skeptical about the whole noble hierarchy thing, but decides to keep his thoughts to himself for now. He knows that fancy titles do not mean much when you are facing down a real monster in the wild. The professors lead the entire class into the woods to explain the next big practical task they have to face. Everyone looks pretty nervous when they hear they have to survive a whole night in a forest filled with monsters. Ruth holds up a special magic scroll and explains that every team leader is getting one for the assignment. It is their only lifeline if things get too dangerous for them to handle. Some of the students think this is going to be a total breeze since they have a safety net. They figure if anything goes wrong, they can just warp away and be perfectly fine. Ruth gets a devious look in her eye and drops the real hammer on them about those safety scrolls. If any team actually uses one to escape, they are going to be instantly demoted. The realization hits the students like a ton of bricks, and they start losing their minds with worry about their grades. While everyone else is panicking, Oscar just stands there looking serious and ready to start the mission. Levin steps up and starts acting like a big shot, claiming they will never withdraw with him there. He is trying to act like a leader, but he just comes off as arrogant. This guy is honestly the worst, just standing there with a smug grin like he conquered the forest. He clearly thinks his noble blood makes him invincible against any threat they might face. The groups finally start to form up as they prepare for the overnight training mission. Everyone is double-checking their maps and team assignments one last time before they head into the dark tree line. Levin shows his true colors by dropping a massive rucksack and ordering Oscar to carry it for him. The arrogant noble clearly thinks he is above manual labor and expects commoners to do all the heavy lifting. His friend is ready to throw hands over the blatant disrespect, but Oscar just gives her a calm look to settle her down. He is not going to let a little extra weight ruin his focus on the upcoming mission. Levin laughs it off and says he likes people who know their place, while Oscar humbly picks up the gear. He is playing it cool for now, but you can tell he is definitely taking notes on this guy's behavior. They start hiking into the woods with our boy carrying a literal mountain of stuff, while Levin strolls along empty-handed. The disparity between the two is obvious, but Oscar is not breaking a single sweat. Not long into the trek, the arrogant noble starts to lose his cool as the rough terrain wears him down. He is huffing and puffing, clearly not used to the physical demands of the wilderness. Brian tries to be the bigger person and offers him a helping hand, but the noble just snaps. He tells our boy to shut up, his pride hurting way more than his tired legs. His friend is worried that Oscar is being way too nice to a jerk who does not deserve any kindness. Our boy just keeps smiling while staying focused on the path ahead and the strange silence of the woods. While the rest of the group is shaking in their boots, Oscar looks totally relaxed and unbothered by the spooky atmosphere. He figures the area is safe since the academy manages it, and they have not seen any monsters. A sudden chill runs down his spine as he senses a massive trap about to spring right under their feet. He screams for everyone to stop immediately, but it looks like he might be just a second too late to save them. Levin is mid-step, and looks annoyed that a commoner is giving him orders in front of everyone. He has no idea that they are about to walk straight into a magical ambush. The ground erupts into a massive, glowing magic circle as Oscar realizes they have just walked into a high-level space warping spell. The entire world literally starts breaking into pieces around them as the trap is triggered. The entire world is literally breaking into pieces around them as the group gets sucked into the unknown trap. Oscar keeps his cool and yells for everyone to ready their staffs for an immediate fight. Our boy Brian stands with his group as the world around them literally shatters into glowing fragments of mana. She instantly notices the surroundings have changed and begins to panic as she realizes they are no longer in their familiar forest. She realizes they might have accidentally ended up in the notorious 5th training ground, and everyone just starts panicking immediately. One of the guys starts shouting about how this place is strictly reserved for upperclassmen, and they have no business being here at all. Brian looks down and notices a glowing magic circle fading away on the grass, and he instantly knows this was no accident. Someone deliberately set a trap to teleport them into this death zone for some reason. Brian suggests they should probably use their magic emergency paper to call for help before things get even worse for them. Levin grips the emergency teleportation scroll and begins to tear it apart without a single moment of hesitation. Instead of using it, Levin just rips the whole thing to shreds right in front of Brian's shocked and confused eyes. The other students are screaming at him for destroying their only lifeline, but Levin just laughs it off like a maniac. Our boy asks him what the hell he thinks he's doing, but Levin just calls this a perfect opportunity to show off. The arrogant noble cracks his knuckles with a smug grin on his face, because he views this life-threatening situation as a stage to display his power. Levin starts walking deeper into the woods and orders everyone to follow him if they want to survive this dangerous ordeal. The terrified girl clings to Oscar and begs him not to leave her side while they venture into the dangerous woods. Brian just sighs to himself, thinking about how much of a massive headache this entire situation is becoming for him today. Suddenly, our boy senses something dangerous lurking in the shadows, and his whole vibe shifts into a serious combat mode instantly. Deep in the dark woods, a low, menacing growl echoes through the trees as something hungry starts closing in on them. A terrifying four-eyed wolf emerges from the darkness with its fangs bared and saliva dripping from its hungry mouth. Levin sports a twisted and excited expression because he is thrilled that the monsters appeared even sooner than he anticipated. He draws out a fancy ritual blade that starts glowing with a sharp blue energy as he prepares his first move. Brian remains composed and decides to use this dangerous encounter as a rare opportunity to test out the secret spells he has been practicing. Levin suddenly sticks his arm out and pushes Brian back, telling him that a commoner has no business being in the front. The arrogant noble orders the commoner to stay back, so he can show everyone the true difference in power between their social classes. The sheer audacity of this guy is enough to make anyone sweat, and Brian is clearly reaching his limit with this clown. The massive predator digs its claws into the dirt, preparing to launch itself forward for a lethal strike against the young intruders. The beast lets out a deafening roar that shakes the very trees as it prepares to tear the arrogant noble apart. Levin grips his magical catalyst with both hands as his mana begins to surge with an overwhelming intensity for his next big attack. He shouts the name of his powerful spell as a massive golden magic circle erupts beneath his feet and floods the entire area with blinding light. Jagged pillars of solid rock burst out of the ground with enough force to shatter anything in their path today. The wolves are caught completely off guard as the massive stones pin them down and trap them in a makeshift prison. Levin yells for the others to finish them off now, while the monsters are stuck and unable to fight back anymore. The other students quickly follow Levin's lead and begin chanting their own spells, while vibrant green magic circles manifest before them. Beams of pure magical energy blast through the air and slam into the trapped beasts with a massive explosion of light and sound. Brian notices the group is actually using decent teamwork, splitting roles between offense and defense to cover their backs. This is the perfect example of how a noble is expected to fight, showcasing their pride and tactical coordination on the battlefield. Our boy is not just sitting back, though. He is watching every move like a hawk while gripping his blade. The situation turns dire when the red-haired noble realizes they are being completely swarmed by an overwhelming number of monsters from every direction. One of the lackeys loses his footing and yells out in a panic, leaving a massive opening for the wolves to exploit. Suddenly, the girl with glasses finds herself separated and staring down a hungry wolf that is ready to tear her apart. The wolf lunges through the air with its jaws wide open, while the poor girl remains frozen in place from sheer terror. But Brian is not about to let that happen, stepping up with a look of absolute focus in his eyes as mana begins to swirl. Brian activates his fire bullet spell, which is clearly packed with way more mana than a standard student could handle. A massive pillar of flame erupts and incinerates the wolf, just in time to save the girl from a gruesome end. Brian refuses to back down as he shields the girl from the monster's deadly pounce with zero hesitation. The girl looks up at him with pure shock, clearly not expecting this quiet kid to be packing that kind of heat. After the wolf attack is over, the red-haired leader tries to act cool and takes credit for all the heavy lifting. Later that night, the group sets up a campfire to recover, but Brian decides to sit a bit further away to keep to himself. That arrogant noble actually has the nerve to tell our boy that he is just lucky to be part of such a talented group. Brian just gives him a polite smile and agrees, not even bothering to correct the guy because he knows the truth. Brian realizes that while coordination is fine, he needs enough individual power to reach the level of the legends. His brooding is interrupted when the girl with glasses approaches him with a couple of hot mugs and a sweet smile. She hands him a drink, reminding him that she told him to stay close, and he just thanks her while playing it cool. Brian asks the girl about her defensive magic, after noticing that the spell got significantly stronger the closer it was to her. The noble just laughs it off from the background, making a snide comment about how commoners are always overthinking the basics of magic, while the others are busy joking around. Brian starts analyzing the logic of mana to figure out how to increase his efficiency. He flashes a confident little smirk, knowing he is onto something big that could change the way he fights forever. He realizes that the logic of magic in this world has some very interesting loopholes that he can finally exploit. He quietly says that he understands now, while the girl just looks at him like he has finally lost his mind. She calls him Oscar, but he is too focused to notice. He begins comparing the way mana fills the body to the concept of sword kai from his previous life. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks, and he looks like he just discovered the cheat codes to this entire world. But hold on, because deep in the woods, a mysterious guy with an eye patch is standing around a glowing magical circle. It turns out he is actually spying on our group, watching their every move through a high-level scouting spell like some kind of creep. The mysterious stranger tightly grips his whip as he prepares to unleash a new level of trouble on the group. He stands over a glowing magic circle and mutters to himself that things are finally starting to get interesting. A terrifying shadow monster looms behind him as he commands the beast to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Under the bright glow of a full moon, the students huddle around a flickering campfire while their professor keeps a watchful eye over the camp. But they have no idea that their peaceful night is about to end in total chaos. The terrified students shiver and huddle together under their blankets as the silence of the night begins to feel increasingly oppressive. The professor notes that 20% of the participants have already dropped out, while she praises the remaining students for their excellence during this year's exam. Professor Isabel arrives on the scene with total confidence to take over the night shift from her colleague, while the exhausted students try to get some rest. Red-headed Professor Isabel walks up to take over the night shift. She's looking confident and ready to handle whatever the forest throws at her tonight. Isabel activates a magical viewing screen to monitor the elite students, and is pleasantly surprised to see that the top-ranked kids are doing quite well for their rank. Professor Isabel stands with her colleague and reflects on the strength of the students, admitting that the elite class is performing better than expected. The professor notices something strange and wonders why the magical signals are starting to act up during her watch. While the instructors keep watch, Brian takes a moment to relax by the fire and enjoy a hot drink with his teammates. The elite students are finally catching a break, but they are still on high alert for any sudden monster attacks in the dark woods. Brian thinks about the way master swordsmen circulate and compress energy within their bodies to gain a massive advantage in combat. Brian stares into his cup and wonders if he can apply that same energy circulation logic to his own magical powers to boost his strength. The sudden sound of a terrified scream nearby catches Brian off guard and snaps him out of his deep thoughts instantly. Panic immediately spreads through the camp as terrified students come running out of the woods screaming for their lives to avoid being slaughtered. Levin laughs off the initial commotion because he thinks another pathetic low-level monster is just trying to scare them for no reason. Out of nowhere, a massive explosion of fire erupts right in front of the group and transforms the forest floor into a wall of roaring fire. Suddenly, a massive pillar of fire erupts right in front of them and makes everyone realize this is definitely not a low-level training exercise. A gargantuan beast emerges from the darkness, and its massive scaly body is covered in terrifying surgical stitches and scars. The students are completely paralyzed with shock because a dragon has absolutely no business being in a low-level training area like this. The massive beast opens its terrifying mouth and lets out a deafening roar that makes the ground tremble beneath their feet. A thunderous roar echoes through the dense forest and signals that the unlucky group of students has officially become the prey. Levin panics and screams that a dragon like this should only be a target for a demon emperor-level warrior, while the students were never supposed to encounter such a threat. Brian realizes that this monster is far too strong for them, and suspects that someone is intentionally targeting them to make sure they do not survive the night. He tells the others to use the magic paper to call for help, but Levin reveals he already tore his paper up and threw it away earlier. The girl with the glasses is horrified to learn that their only way to call for help from the professors has been destroyed by her teammate. Brian realizes their escape route is cut off and tells his teammates they have no choice but to stand their ground against the monster. The girl looks at him like he is insane and asks if he is actually planning to fight a monster of that caliber with a small blade. Levin realizes they are in deep trouble and tries to convince his panicked teammates to hide behind his defensive magic to survive the onslaught. Levin tries to pull himself together, suggesting they use his defensive magic to hold the line for a while. Levin prepares to summon his strongest defensive magic to shield his friends from the dragon's incoming attacks and hold the line. He steps up and prepares to cast the strongest defensive spell in his arsenal, despite his hands shaking. The other students are terrified and demand to know what a simple stone wall is supposed to do against a literal dragon's power. The boys burst into tears as they remember the promise Levin made to protect them throughout the entire exam, no matter what happens. The group huddles together behind the jagged rock shield, while the dragon begins its relentless assault on their position from above. The girl with the glasses realizes she cannot stay hidden and prepares to unleash her most powerful offensive spell to help her friends. She shouts the name of her earth magic and channels every ounce of her remaining mana into a single strike against the beast. She calls out her own spell, aiming to put a dent in the dragon's thick and scaly hide. The students watch the dust cloud with bated breath and pray that their desperate attack was enough to kill the beast or at least slow it down. The boys peer through the smoke, desperately hoping that the combined attack actually did some real damage to the dragon. The girl turns around in absolute horror as the dragon steps out of the smoke without a single scratch on its scaly body. She screams at Oscar to quit wasting time and call for reinforcements before the monster destroys them all. The students give in to total despair as the dragon gathers a massive ball of concentrated flame in its maw to finish them off. Oscar realizes the beast is pulling magic from the surrounding atmosphere itself to charge its body with an incredible amount of power. Our boy remains completely unimpressed by the display and claims that the monster's abilities are actually quite simple and basic. He decides to finally unleash his own hidden power to show the creature which one of them is truly superior. Our boy stands his ground as the massive beast roars right in his face, preparing to unleash its final attack. Brian begins to condense an insane amount of natural mana into a single point to prepare for a strike that will decide the outcome of this entire fight. His eyes glow with a sharp blue light as he calculates the exact moment to strike with perfect precision. He unleashes a massive pillar of purple flames that carves through the air with enough heat to melt solid rock in an instant. The blast connects with a violent explosion, completely engulfing the chimera in a wave of destructive energy and bright light. The massive creature finally collapses into a heap of rubble and dust, as the students watch the incredible scene in absolute silence. He stands there with a cold expression, casually holding a small dagger as the embers of the fight drift around him. Miles away, a mysterious figure watches the aftermath of the battle through a shimmering magical portal with a look of pure disgust. The villain is absolutely shocked that a lowly freshman managed to destroy his masterpiece with such a display of overwhelming magical force. The man turns away from his viewing circle, his mind racing with new plans to deal with this unexpected threat. He vows to eventually return and finish what he started, since he cannot allow someone this powerful to roam free in the academy. Dark energy pulses through the air as the villain disappears back into the shadows to plan his next move against the academy. Brian reflects on the fact that usually only those with noble blood are allowed to wield such a high level of power. He looks down at his hands, watching the faint magical residue dissipate into the cold night air as the adrenaline fades. A small smile finally creeps onto his face because he realizes his risky theory actually worked out better than he hoped. He realizes that this victory was only possible because of the secret techniques he mastered during his previous life as a legendary swordsman. The dragon lies motionless on the ground, its jaw broken and blood dripping from its mouth after that final crushing blow. The sheer scale of the kill is evident as the monster remains slumped over, its reign of terror officially brought to an end. The students cautiously move toward the impact site to verify if the terrifying beast has truly been defeated and the danger has passed. Oscar stands frozen in place as he struggles to comprehend how a commoner could possess such an overwhelming and impossible amount of magical power. He looks at Brian's back, struggling with the humiliating realization that a commoner was the one who stepped up to protect them all. Brian feels his legs start to give out as the sheer exhaustion from using such a high-level spell finally catches up to his body. She screams his name as his body goes limp, and he starts to fall forward, his energy completely drained from the battle. He manages to catch himself on the ground and tells her not to worry because he is honestly just a little tired. The intense recoil from the spell feels like his entire body is being ripped apart from the inside by jagged glass and lightning. The heat radiating from his own skin is unbearable, and the pain is so sharp it feels like his veins are going to burst. A thunderous impact shakes the ground and forces the exhausted students to prepare themselves for yet another potential encounter with a deadly monster. The girl grips her staff tight, terrified that their luck has finally run out and something even worse is coming for them. A massive stone foot slams down onto the dirt, sending a cloud of dust into the air as a giant figure emerges. It turns out to be Isabel, arriving on top of a massive golem after following the traces of a suspicious teleportation circle she found. She looks down at the group with a mix of relief and concern, asking if everyone is actually safe and unharmed. The students look up at their teacher like she is a literal goddess who just showed up to save their souls. Brian looks up at her with glazed eyes, his face pale and covered in sweat as he reaches his absolute limit. With a final heavy thud, our boy passes out cold on the grass while his classmates rush to his side in a panic. Isabel surveys the battlefield in complete silence, while trying to understand how her student managed to unleash such a high level of destructive magic. She lets out a long, stressed sigh and rubs her forehead, knowing she has a mountain of paperwork and explaining to do. The teacher tells the group that she wants to hear a full report from every single one of them once they get back. Oscar looks away in shame, likely dreading the moment he has to admit that the commoner carried the entire team through the fight. She stands tall on the rock, looking out over the forest as the first hints of dawn begin to color the sky. The sun begins to rise over the distant horizon to signal that the long and terrifying night has finally come to an end. Sometime later, Brian finds himself sitting in a lavish office, facing the headmaster who is sitting behind a massive, ornate desk. The headmaster is deeply troubled that a group of infiltrators managed to breach the academy defenses and summon a high-level monster without being detected. The headmaster leans forward with a grim expression, his eyes fixed on Brian as he prepares to deliver some very serious news. He explains that certain scoundrels are targeting talented commoners, and have already managed to sneak their way into the school system. Brian finally realizes that the brutal encounter he survived in the woods was just one small piece of a much larger conspiracy. The old man gives him a bit of credit, telling him he did a truly remarkable job just by managing to survive that ordeal. Brian makes it clear that he only survived the ordeal because he made a firm choice to become as strong as possible. He tells the headmaster that he finally feels like he has gained a solid foothold on the path to reaching his full potential. The headmaster looks out at the unsuspecting students and admits that since real harm has been done, he must deliver some incredibly harsh news. Brian looks at the headmaster with confusion, wondering why the old man is being so vague about the harsh news he has to deliver. The headmaster drops a massive bombshell by ordering him to leave the academy immediately and live the rest of his days, without ever using magic again. He remembers being celebrated as a hero by the royal court and realizes that living a life without magic would be no different than a death sentence. The headmaster tries to soften the blow by explaining that magic isn't everything, and that plenty of people across the world manage to live perfectly happy lives without it. He urges the boy not to throw away the chance for a peaceful life, while he is still young enough to start over and find a new kind of happiness. The old man paints a picture of a peaceful future, where he can finally settle down and be happy with the woman he loves. Brian rejects the headmaster's suggestion immediately, unable to believe that such a cowardly proposal is even being considered. He tells the old man that he has no intention of quitting now or ever because he is done playing it safe and is ready to face his enemies head-on. He demands to know why the headmaster would even suggest such a thing when he has worked so hard to refine his new magic theories. He points out that if his enemies are already hiding inside the academy, then running away would be the most dangerous thing he could possibly do. Instead of being afraid of the threat, he tells the headmaster that he has already come up with a brilliant plan to handle the situation. Brian drops a total bombshell on the old man. He is going to be the bait. Brian remains completely calm and tells the headmaster that he is fully prepared to risk his life for the success of their plan. The headmaster looks absolutely stunned. He did not expect such a bold move from the kid. He stares Brian down and asks him if he is seriously not afraid of dying. Brian just smirks. He tells the old man he has no intention of being eaten today. The headmaster can't help but burst into laughter at the sheer audacity of this young man. He finds Brian's confidence incredibly refreshing despite the lethal danger they are both about to face. Brian is a bit taken aback by the sudden change in the old man's mood. The headmaster finally accepts Brian's resolve and offers his hand to seal the deal. This is a huge turning point because they are officially committed to this insane mission now. They shake hands on the deal. Our boy has officially secured his dangerous new mission. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes through the room. It sounds like something is finally beginning. Brian pulls out a ragged piece of equipment. This thing has definitely seen better days. Brian examines the old, worn-out staff he has been carrying around for ages. With a satisfying click, the mechanism still functions perfectly, despite all the intense battles it has already survived. Brian thinks back to his former master, who once told him that even a beginner staff is better than using bare hands for high-level magic. He looks at the worn-out item in his palm. It served its purpose well enough, but now he realizes it just cannot withstand his newly refined magical power anymore. Brian spots a familiar figure in the distance and calls out her name. He seems surprised that she managed to find him here. She looks happy to finally catch up to him. She is practically glowing with excitement. Brian apologizes for making her tag along while she is supposed to be off work. Oscar beams and says she had some shopping to do anyway, so it is fine. They head to a shop filled with all kinds of magical staves and equipment. The shopkeeper starts bragging about his selection. Our boy is not exactly impressed by it. The man holds up a flashy staff and claims it will make Brian get noticed. Brian wonders about the actual effects of the gems attached to it instead of the looks. Oscar tells him to look at the price first. Her face is pale with shock. 1 million currency is way too much. Brian decides it is time to try another shop. Every merchant they meet seems to be a scammer trying to charge them a small fortune for a simple wand. These salesmen are absolutely relentless in their pursuit. They will do anything for a sale. The city is bustling under the bright sun. They keep searching for a decent bargain. Brian sighs as they sit down. Everything they found so far was way too expensive. Oscar tries to stay positive while clutching her own shopping bags tightly in her arms. Our boy looks a bit discouraged. Finding a high-quality staff on a budget is hard. Oscar yells that she is staying with him until the very end. She is committed. Brian realizes that having such a dedicated companion might actually be the key to surviving the dangerous trials ahead of him. They spot a rustic-looking sign for another shop. It seems a bit more promising. Brian notices the staff icon and thinks they might sell what he needs here too. A passing worker warns them to stay away. He tells them it is a bad idea. Brian wonders why the man is so worried. What could be wrong with this place? Rumor has it the shopkeeper is scary and forces customers to buy things they do not want. Brian thinks that sounds like a very strange way to run a business. Oscar is terrified by the warning. She thinks they will be trapped inside forever. Brian does not care about rumors. He reaches for the doorknob and opens the door. He figures the shop is still open for a reason. Inside, it is dark and moody. The atmosphere is completely different from the flashy shops they visited earlier in the day. The walls are lined with all sorts of mysterious equipment. Oscar looks like she wants to bolt. Brian walks deeper into the shadows to see what they have in stock. A sudden loud thud echoes through the room. Someone is making a lot of noise. A massive man appears and demands to know if they are actually there to buy something or just wasting his time. The shopkeeper seems annoyed that they managed to track him down to his secret location. This shopkeeper seems way too dangerous to be a merchant, as he continues to sharpen his blade while staring them down. Brian remains perfectly calm. He is not easily scared by a big guy in a shop. The massive man narrows his eyes while trying to figure out if Brian is actually a threat. The man suddenly tightens his grip on the handle as he prepares to lash out in anger at Brian. The man screams at them. He asks if Brian is trying to mock his business. Brian and Oscar are caught in the middle of his sudden and violent outburst. He actually throws the knife. It whizzes past Brian's head and sticks into the wall. The man bellows that he has no staves to sell to a lowly swordsman like him. Brian stares back with an intense gaze. He is not backing down from this confrontation. Oscar tells him this place is dangerous. She wants to leave as quickly as possible. Oscar starts to lose her cool because she realizes just how shady this new shop really is. She is practically begging Brian to turn around before they get into serious trouble with the locals. Instead of running away, Brian just gives a confident smirk at the challenge ahead. He can tell this mysterious shopkeeper is hiding something special, and he is determined to find out what it is.